Let's begin by discussing what is a sentence. A sentence is a group of words that expresses a complete thought. You can contrast a sentence with a sentence fragment. A sentence fragment is a kind of mistake that people sometimes make in writing English. A sentence fragment is a group of words that doesn't express a complete thought. Now, sentence fragments are often used when people are casually speaking to one another, but a sentence fragment is considered a mistake in writing. Here's the reason. A sentence fragment, a group of words that doesn't express a complete thought by itself, may be clear in a conversation because people are talking back and forth, and this context gives meaning to the sentence fragment. In writing, however, there is no conversation to give a context and therefore to explain the meaning of the sentence fragment. So a sentence fragment which might be clear in conversation is not clear in writing. That's why when you're writing English, you want to write in complete sentences, not in sentence fragments. Consider, for example, this group of words. Out to lunch. Is this a sentence or a sentence fragment? Well, it's a sentence fragment because it doesn't express a complete thought. Out to lunch doesn't tell us who is out to lunch or explain what the meaning of those words out to lunch really is. The words out to lunch could become part of a complete sentence, of course. You could say, Susan and I are going out to lunch, or Frank was out to lunch when I visited his office. Now we have a complete thought and therefore a complete sentence. But by themselves, the words out to lunch are a fragment rather than a complete sentence. Or consider these words. Maybe later. Is this a sentence or a sentence fragment? Again, it's a sentence fragment. The words maybe later by themselves don't express a complete thought. Now you could imagine having a conversation in which someone would say, maybe later, in answer to a question. In a conversation, a sentence fragment like this can be meaningful and can be understood. For example, you might say to someone, oh, do you feel like having a bite of lunch right now? And your friend might answer, maybe later. In the context of the conversation, you can understand what the sentence fragment means. But if the words maybe later appeared by themselves in a piece of writing, you probably wouldn't understand what the words were referring to. That's what makes it a sentence fragment and therefore incorrect in writing. So writing in English must consist of complete sentences. In writing, a sentence always begins with a capital letter. That's one of the larger letters that stands out on the page and indicates in English the beginning of a sentence. A sentence always ends with a punctuation mark. And there are a few different choices for punctuation marks that you can use to end a sentence. The most common punctuation mark to use to end a sentence is a period. The alternative choices are a question mark or an exclamation point. In a moment, we'll explain exactly how you would decide whether to use a period, a question mark, or an exclamation point to mark the end of a sentence. But in any case, the punctuation mark is necessary at the end of the sentence because it makes it easy for the reader to see when one sentence ends and the next one begins. Now, in English, there are four main kinds of sentences: declarative sentences, interrogative sentences, exclamatory sentences, and imperative sentences. Let's define each one and look at an example. A declarative sentence states a fact. Take a look at this example. The sun is shining today. This sentence states a fact about what today's weather is like. Therefore, it's a declarative sentence. The vast majority of English sentences that you'll encounter in reading and writing are declarative sentences. Notice that this sentence begins with a capital letter and ends with a period. Almost all declarative sentences end with periods. And again, this is the most common type of sentence that you're likely to encounter or that you'll be writing for school or for work. An interrogative sentence asks a question. Here's an example. Do you have any plans for this afternoon? When I say this interrogative sentence, I'm asking a question of whoever is listening to me. I'm asking them what they're planning to do this afternoon. An interrogative sentence ends with a question mark. That makes it clear to the reader that a question is being asked. And again, like all sentences, it begins with a capital letter. The third type of sentence is an exclamatory sentence. An exclamatory sentence expresses a strong emotion. Look at this example. What a beautiful day for a picnic. Maybe you could tell from the way I read that sentence aloud that I'm expressing a strong emotion or a strong feeling about what beautiful weather we have today. This makes it an exclamatory sentence, and it ends with an exclamation point. This is a special mark of punctuation that's used to indicate to the reader that strong emotions or feelings are being expressed in the sentence. The fourth type of sentence is an imperative sentence. An imperative sentence makes a request or gives an order. The person who hears an imperative sentence is being required to do something. Look at this example. Come with me. This is an imperative sentence because I'm inviting the person who hears the sentence to do something, namely, to come with me. An imperative sentence may end with a period or with an exclamation point. It all depends on how forceful the request or command or order is intended to be. A command or order which is given with a great deal of emotion and feeling and forcefulness might be ended with an exclamation point. Otherwise, a period will do. In this example, we've used an exclamation point to indicate that strong feelings are behind the invitation, come with me. These then are the four types of sentences: a declarative sentence, an interrogative sentence, an exclamatory sentence, and an imperative sentence. In most writing, declarative sentences are by far the most common. Interrogative sentences come second most frequent, and exclamatory and imperative sentences are very, very rare in writing. They're often used in speaking and conversation, but rarely in writing. So for the purposes of English grammar, as it affects your work and school use of English, the declarative and interrogative sentences are the most important.